I am Jennifer Foxworthy, and I am a domestic violence thriver. I came from a broken place. As a young girl, I was looking for love and acceptance in the wrong places, and I didn't feel pretty. My self-esteem was low, and I didn't know my worth. I was punched, slapped, and called names. I was lied to and missed all the warning signs. But today, I am happily married to my loving husband, Tom. I am a mother, an author, a motivational speaker, an entrepreneur, and I am your host of Living Unshackled on Purpose. You're in a domestic violence relationship. You want to get out, but you don't know how and you don't know where to go. Well, my next guest, Miss Jessica Castle, has the detailed information that you need. Welcome back to another episode of Living Unshackled on Purpose. My very special guest, Jessica Castle. Wait till you hear her story. She's an amazing resource in the community of York. But before we get started, I always want to give God the glory. Heavenly Father, thank you so much for waking us up today. Thank you for traveling mercy and grace. And I just thank you for this platform and for allowing me to be a vessel to bring stories and resources to you, to the masses, Father God. I ask that you flow through Jessica and I, and that the viewers, that they will be blessed and that they will learn something and that they will move forward and live on purpose and know that you are God and able. Thank you. In Jesus' name, amen.
My name is Jessica Castle. I am the Community Education Director for Access York and Victim Assistance Center, which are programs of the YWCA York. Our mission is to eliminate domestic and sexual violence in the York County area, and we provide comprehensive services to victims of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking. In addition to our comprehensive service, we are looking at ways to prevent violence from happening in the first place by raising education, raising awareness, especially with our youth, going into the school districts and teaching our youth about healthy relationships so that nobody finds themselves in an abusive situation.
Amen. Jessica, welcome to Living Unshackled on Purpose. I am truly blessed to have you here. York Access is an amazing resource in this community. You guys are very active. I'm curious, how did you end up in this industry? Or in this field?
It was a journey.
Okay.
My background is actually journalism, and I spent many years in the marketing and educational publishing business. I stayed with my family to raise my children and started working in the school districts in an emotional support classroom and just saw the trauma that our young people were going through and many times out of the violence that they grew up in. And so I had an opportunity to come to Access and Victim Assistance Center through a grant that studied the effects of violence on children. And it was a part-time position. And from there, I had stayed as a community educator and went around to the school districts of York County teaching about healthy relationships and about healthy boundaries. So
amazing.
Here I am today.
And which is absolutely wonderful because it takes a compassionate person. And you really have to compartmentalize, because I can imagine that you've seen a lot of battered women, their children, the effects, and how do you continue? How do you go on to where you don't carry that into your heart, but you have to be compassionate to your client? And so I want to know, and I want you to help educate our viewers, exactly what is domestic violence and how is that related to human trafficking?
Sure. Domestic violence is all about power and control. It's one person wanting power over somebody else to disempower an individual and to control what they say, what they do, where they go. And human trafficking is exactly that. It is somebody that is forced, coerced into a life of servitude. We have labor trafficking and then sexual exploitation, which is more of the victims that we see, being that we are the Domestic Violence and Rape Crisis Center for York County. But it is not a choice of human trafficking victims. It is not a choice of theirs. It is through force that they are made to live in servitude.
Jessica, what signs would you encourage people? Because I believe we cannot reduce and eradicate domestic violence or human trafficking if we don't pay attention, if we don't get involved. So how do you encourage people? What signs should they look for? What should they observe? What should they do? Because many of us, we don't want to get involved because we don't want to put ourselves at risk.
Right.
However, we need to take hold of this.
Right.
So what do we do?
Well, I think as an individual to be aware of those early signs of an abusive situation, and many times most people think of that physical abuse when they think of domestic violence, but it often starts out with emotional and verbal abuse, psychological abuse, those insults, those put-downs, that really kind of destroy somebody's self-esteem and idea of self-worth, where they can be vulnerable then to be, manipulated and controlled. So when we talk about the youth, right, is to build that self-esteem and to build that self-worth and healthy boundaries and giving the people the confidence and courage to stand up for themselves and know that they deserve to be treated with respect.
Absolutely. You have hit on something big. We see in our society that there are adults, they're angry, they're acting out their behaviors, but we have to understand they were probably traumatized children, and when their situation is left unprocessed, they become angry, traumatized adults. So we're going to talk more about this, and I just thank you so much for bringing everything to the forefront. We're going to take a quick commercial break, folks. Get your beverages. Come right back. Another episode of Living Unshackled on Purpose. No more fear. No more shame. No more doubt. Low self-esteem. Resentment. I am releasing the shackles. I am taking my identity back. I am taking my family back. I am taking my career back. It is a new day. I am releasing the shackles. I am Jennifer Foxworthy. This is Living Unshackled on Purpose. Join me as we take a 360-degree perspective on how to release the shackles in your life, personally and professionally. Welcome back to Living Unshackled on Purpose. I'm your host, Jennifer Foxworthy. Jessica was enlightening us and educating us on domestic violence, human trafficking, but we're going to concentrate more on the domestic violence because it's everybody's issue. It reaches far and wide, and it doesn't discriminate.
It does not.
So, Jessica, and I am a survivor and thriver. I always put that on there. I am a domestic violence thriver, but share with us the national statistics. Give us an overview of why it reaches far and wide.
Sure. Well, as you said, it doesn't discriminate. All economic classes and races and cultures all experience domestic violence, not only in York County, but across the state, across the nation, in the world. Every region of the world is affected by it.
Absolutely.
Statistically, 1 in 4 women will be abused in a relationship, and 1 in 3 teens are in an abusive relationship. And just interesting, last year, the Pennsylvania Coalition Against Domestic Violence, which is our state coalition, came out with a report card looking at what the fatalities as a result of domestic violence. In York County, we had 15 fatalities as a result of domestic violence incidents, which placed us 3rd in the state, and that is behind Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. And so it's kind of frightening to think about York County to be in those ranks.
3rd in the state.
3rd in the state.
Wow.
Yeah, kind of frightening.
Now, we know that men get abused as well. What are those statistics nationally?
Yeah, it's like 1 in 6.
Okay, that's what I figured.
Yeah, but men don't talk about it, and unfortunately, there is this silence around abuse that men suffer, and so there's those gender roles and those certain expectations that men have, and so they often suffer in silence.
You are absolutely right. And how do we get our men? Because when they're little boys, we tell them, "Don't you cry," and hold it in.
Right.
And so they grow up not able to emotionally present themselves.
Right.
And their behaviors, because they're not able to cry or do it in a healthy manner, they act out, or their behaviors are less than. So we really need to nurture our boys in what is healthy emotion, and what is negative emotion, and to kind of how to stay away from that.
Yes, and I know one of the things that always surprised me is how many young men will come forward during a presentation at school and disclose that they are in an abusive situation but don't know what to do about it. But we have to engage our men, right?
Yes.
Because domestic violence is a man's problem. It's not just a problem for women. We need to have their advocacy. We need to have their support. We need to be teaching young men to be healthy in healthy relationships and those healthy role models.
And Jessica, it's like people, they think, oh, you don't have the scars, the outward scars, the bruises, the black eyes. However, domestic violence is economical, emotional, mental, and that takes place more than the physical is obviously there, but not in every victim.
Right.
So you can't discount, oh, you don't look like a domestic violence victim, therefore you don't need help and the resources and everything.
No, it's a public health problem, domestic violence, and the Center for Disease Control is one at the forefront of that prevention effort, because we know billions and billions of dollars are spent as a result of health care and also mental health issues as a result of the trauma domestic violence victims suffer.
Absolutely. Now, you had a story that you wanted to share as far as how it comes full circle.
Sure. Our prevention efforts in the school talk about how we prevent violence, right? And one of the programs for the very young is that child sexual abuse prevention.
Yes.
And we talk to the kids about having ownership and being able to say no. And if somebody's touching them in a way uncomfortable, they have the power to say no.
That's right.
They're in charge, right?
Yes.
So in one of the schools, we give all those lessons. One of the services we provide is to go to the emergency room when any victim of domestic violence or sexual assault presents themselves. Okay. And I was called to the hospital to see a 10-year-old young girl. Always a heartbreaking, right? You walk in.
Yes.
And as she's telling her story of being at a friend's house for a sleepover, getting ready to join the children downstairs, an adult male walked into the room and began stroking her and kissing her and approaching her. And she said, "No, leave me alone," and immediately left the room. And I said, "I'm so proud of you. That was so brave, because that's what we teach in the schools when we talk about a lesson." And she said, "I know. You gave me that lesson in school."
Wow.
And I had the language to use. And can you imagine what might have happened if she didn't have the language or didn't feel empowered to stop it?
And that's what we have to do in our schools. It starts young, and then they will hold on to that as they get older. Wow, powerful. We are going to take another commercial break. Please continue to join us. We are going to get into York Access, what that program is all about, and how it's helping the community of York County. Thank you. Welcome back to Living Unshackled on Purpose. I am your host, Jennifer Foxworthy, my lovely, beautiful, special guest, Jessica Castle. Before we took the commercial break, we were talking about the victim and how does one get into an abusive relationship. But I want to kind of go into the abuser and the tactics that they use.
Right, sure. Well, we talked about the abuser. Their goal is to gain power and control over their victim. And with anybody who has kind of a job to do, they're going to have tools in their tool belt to do it. And the tactics that abusers often use, emotional and verbal abuse that we talked about, certainly physical abuse, which could be threats, physical violence, jealousy.
Yes.
Right? They can be overly jealous, which results in very controlling behavior, false accusations, blaming the victim, isolating the victim from their family and friends, because when things go wrong, limiting the resources that individual has to get the help that they need, it can be a very useful and efficient tactic.
Absolutely. And, you made me do this. I wouldn't have thrown the plate of eggs at your head had you made them the way I wanted them to.
Exactly. If you just listen to what I said, right? But blaming the victim is a big
Absolutely.
part of it.
And then the economical abuse of just giving them a little bit of allowance. I'm giving you $20. You go to the grocery store, you get this, you come back, and that's it.
Sure.
And so without any family and friend support, without any financial means, it puts the victim in a horrible situation.
Sure. And a lot of people ask, why didn't she leave? Right? Why didn't she leave? And it's a lot of victim blaming around that, which we need to move away from. But there are some very real reasons why victims don't leave, out of fear, right? Because when a victim does leave a domestic violence situation, they are at the highest risk for fatality.
Absolutely.
Because that threat is a real threat, and they know that violence can certainly happen because it's happened before.
And I tell people when I do my my motivational speaking that the abuser, they don't have a neon sign above their forehead that says, "Hey, I just whipped up on my last 5 girlfriends. You're going to be number 6. How about that date? Want to see Sleeping with the Enemy?" It doesn't happen like that. And then the victim, they don't wake up one morning saying, I'm feeling kind of strong. I want to get in an abusive relationship.
Sure.
So I try to educate kind of in a sarcastic, witty way to let them know that I'm strong. I'll never let anybody put their hands on me. A victim does not purposely go seeking.
No, they don't. No, they don't. And it's that kind of pattern in a relationship that any relationship goes through, right? That honeymoon phase where everything is great, you're having a great time. Then there's some friction and argument, right? Any relationship, even the healthiest relationships have arguments and disagreements. And then there's that reconciliation phase, right? All relationships go through it, but in an abusive situation, there's still that honeymoon phase. There's still something that connects the victim with that abuser, and they love that person, right? And there's so many things that keep them wanting that relationship to work.
Honey, I'm sorry, I'll never do it again. The dozens of roses, I love you, kisses, 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 and then because it's a 3-cycle phase.
Absolutely.
I experienced that obviously in myself, in my abusive relationship, and once I got sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I think that truly propels people to get out of their traumatic situation. I was grateful to get out of it alive, but many don't. That I'm able to live to tell the story. And that's what prompted me to write this book where there's 6 stories, Tomorrow My Sunshine Will Come, that there is something that happens in a person's childhood, whether it's molestation, sexual assault, rape, unprocessed feelings, where that low self-esteem creeps in. And then how does one get out of that? And I truly believe that God is He is the source. And He only gives us what we can handle. And from a spiritual point of view, that's what helped me, that this is not love. This is not love. Love is not supposed to hurt. And unfortunately, hurt people hurt. And for our teenagers who believe, well, he loves me because he's keeping tabs on me and he wants to know when I arrive at point A and when I'm leaving point B. But those are signs of control.
Absolutely. And they're misinterpreted a lot of times, especially with young people, because that constant attention looks like, they just love me. They just want to be with me all the time. We're just so in love. We're spending all of our time together, and he's concerned. And I wouldn't want a partner that just didn't care, right? But how much and the extent of which, that control is happening. And there's a great organization, Love is Respect, and talking about love is not hurt. Loveisrespect.org. a great source of information for teens especially, where they have a great resource for them.
And I'm grateful that you are bringing up the resources, because people need to know that they don't have to stay in their situation. Even though it's scary, you're uncharted territory. And I would encourage you, only tell people that you trust. Not every family member or friend is going to have your back to where, because they may give you up to the abuser, right?
Right.
And you have to have a safety bag.
Yeah.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Absolutely. I'm glad that you mentioned that, because safety planning is a really big part of leaving an abusive relationship safely and successfully.
Yes.
And safety planning is more than just having an extra bag of clothes or contact or a little bit of extra cash. Safety planning is about planning your future, right? And leaving all that you know, right? We go on a trip and we plan and take medicine and leave contacts, right, for a weekend trip.
Yeah, passports, everything.
Right,
Yes.
but think about leaving for good, right? And that takes a little bit of preparation. So safety planning looks at, what are your goals? What are your strengths? What are your resources? What are the limitations of those? Who can I reach out to? The Vigor is an organization online that does a fantastic job, an interactive safety planning online tool that a victim can use. At Access, our legal department often works with victims' safety planning, because it is such an important part of leaving. But it has some thought, and every safety plan is different for each individual, because each individual has their own strengths and resources and goals and options that are available.
Is it possible for abusers to get help and get on the right track, or for families to stay together and be a healthy nucleus?
There is. Spirit Trust Lutheran runs a batterers intervention program that somebody can reach out to help. I know a lot of the times the court will direct abusers there, but they're welcome to reach out and seek that help. So Spirit Trust Lutheran.
Spirit Trust Lutheran. Wow. So again, Jessica is giving us some amazing resources. Now, Jessica, you're with York Access.
Yeah.
How did this program get started?
It's a great story. From humble beginnings, really. Jane Tucker is our founding mother of Access York. She was also a victim of abuse, and she and a number of ladies went to look for resources, and there were none in York County. And this was 1980 where Access started. So they got together and formed the shelter with a minimal shoestring budget. And Jane is still with us today. She speaks at our advocate training and is very involved in the mission. And so the neat thing is, just this week, she attended our first advocate training, where we reach out to the community and train volunteers and all new staff members, and we had 20-some people around the table. And it was just a testament to what she started and how it grew and how many people were reaching, from just the handful of victims that were served back in the 80s, which isn't that long ago when you think about it.
Right.
But she's still with us today. So it's a wonderful story to see the strength of the organization today.
Just, there's a purpose for everything, yes, you're in a horrible situation, but once you get out of it, it is your opportunity. To me, I think it is your job to reach back and help somebody else.
Pay it forward.
And to say, hey, exactly, pay it forward, Jessica. You're absolutely right. That if I can overcome, I know you can too. And I'm going to walk you through step by step. And so there's so many people that have the compassion and have all the great ideas. Don't sit on those great ideas. Move forward. There is somebody waiting for you to be that valuable resource. Oh my goodness. What a great story, like you mentioned. So what else does York Access do, and any up-and-coming events that you may have?
Sure. Access and Victim Assistance Center is a comprehensive service for victims. We have our emergency shelter, both in York and in Hanover. Stillwaters is the more transitional housing.
Okay.
We have our bridge housing as well, which gives victims a year, 2 years to get back on their feet. We have medical advocacy that works with our healthcare systems.
Nice.
We have our legal advocacy, that accompaniment, PFAs, any information that they need to help them through that legal process. Our victim assistance centers are counseling services that provide counseling for victims of both domestic violence, sexual assault, and human trafficking and other violent crimes. And all of our services are absolutely free.
Wonderful. What about those up-and-coming events?
Sure. Well, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we'll be kicking it off with a kickoff on Thursday. Walk a Mile is our event on Friday, which is the first Friday in York, and we invite all men to come and form teams, wear high heels, or walk a mile in her shoes.
Beautiful.
And all of those proceeds go to benefit Access and the services we provide. It's a fun event. It's a way to engage the community and once again get men involved, because domestic violence, again, is a man's issue as well.
Absolutely. So you have that event coming up. And how do we contact you?
Sure. We have 2 800 numbers, and I'm going to cheat here. Our domestic violence 800 number is 800-262-8444. Our sexual assault hotline number is 1-800-422-3204. And those hotlines are operated 24/7, that any victim can call if they have a question or they're just processing, they don't know really what to do. So I encourage anybody to call either one of those hotlines to seek services.
Outstanding. Thank you for being such a valuable resource to Living Unshackled on Purpose for the community of York. And Jessica, I will continue to pray for you and York Access, all your colleagues and the clients. God is doing an amazing thing, and I'm just so grateful.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Dear, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
You listened to my special guest, Jessica Castle, give you all the information on resources. So what are you going to do with it? I am your host, Jennifer Foxworthy. Thank you for watching Living Unshackled on Purpose. Till next time, beloved.